it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it now. And wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it now. And we see the light coming fast, coming fast. We see the light coming fast. And we feel the hope come at last, come at last. We feel the hope come at last. So wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it now. And wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it now. And we find our truth on the path, on the path. We find our truth on the path. And we're free from the chains of our past, of our past. We're free to move on from the past. So wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it now. And praise for it, praise for it, praise for it, praise for it, praise for it now. And we see the light coming fast, coming fast. We see the light coming fast. And we feel the hope come at last, come at last. We feel the hope come at last.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to do a little talk with Steph series coming up. And Steph is our children's director, and she has put together a series of interesting videos where she's reading a book and going to go through the book with the kids, and each week have a, maybe not each week, but we'll have these periodic installments called Talks with Steph. So we'll start those up right now this week. This is the inaugural week. Here we go.
Hey kids, I'm reading this new book called Love Does for Kids, and I'd love if you would join me. I'm going to call this Talks with Steph, and we're going to learn how to love God, love others, and do stuff. So join in. Hey kids, welcome to Talks with Steph. Today we're going to talk about mistakes. Now, has anybody ever made a mistake? Yeah, me too. And have you ever made a mistake where you were trying so hard to do the right thing, but you ended up hurting somebody instead? Ugh, well, that's what my story today is about. This little boy who was probably in kindergarten, and he had the job of being the wake-up fairy. He got wings and he would go around waking everyone, and he was so excited that he ended up stepping on somebody's nose. Darn! Yeah, he got his wings taken away, and it was not a good day, and he felt awful. But you know what? Jesus says we don't have to stay feeling awful, that he is helping us become something great, even in our mistakes. Now, in this book that we're reading, this tells us how Jesus, he wasn't just friends with people who were perfect. Far from it. He wasn't just friends with people who were the smartest, with people who had the most money. No, Jesus was friends with the people who made the biggest mistakes. For example, he was best friends in his crew were people like the fishermen. They were not the smartest. They didn't even always have their nets on the right side of the boat. He was also friends with the tax collector who stole everybody's money. Oh my goodness. But see, here's the thing. Jesus had a way of telling people who they were becoming and helping them figure that out. And you know what? That's what we can learn today, is that God is concerned with who we are becoming. And when we feel awful and we feel like we've made a big mistake, you know what? Jesus wants to remind you that I'm loved, and I wonder who God is turning me into. And you know what? Here's the answer. You are becoming a helper. You are becoming a leader. You are becoming love.
Hey folks, I'm getting a slide up for you here to play along. So if anybody has their guitar or the ukulele available, let's do this tune. You might remember it from way back. As I was walking down the street one day, a man came up to me and asked me what the time was that was on my watch. And I said, does anybody really know what time it is? Does anybody really care? If so, I can't imagine why. We've all got time enough to cry. As I was walking down the street one day, a pretty lady looked at me and said her diamond watch had stopped cold dead. I said, does anybody really know what time it is? Does anybody really care? If so, I can't imagine why. We've all got time enough to cry. I was walking down the street one day, being being pushed and shoved by people trying to beat the clock, or how I just don't know. I said, does anybody really know what time it is? Does anybody really care? If so, I can't imagine why. We've all got time enough to die. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. From embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven.
Well, good morning, friends. Good to see you all here this morning. I wanted to start with a poem from Ruthie. And Ruthie has blessed us many times with her words and poetry. I thought this was great today. This is called Seed Bomb. She says, I wanted to write something inspirational right now for all the mamas, for all the caretakers, caregivers, the family holders, the aunties, and the in-laws, but I only came up with dust. For everyone who is trying to hold their small world together in a world that feels like a ball of mud, handed by a little who said, "Can you hold on to this?" and walked away. But now you have to pee and the mud has dried and it's cracking and starting to crumble, but you don't want to drop it or let it go. And you couldn't even if you wanted to. Because somewhere along the line, you promised to hold it all together. You picked up this ball or received it without ever knowing what responsibility you held in your hands, what fragility. And even though a baby is crying somewhere and the laundry has piled up everywhere, and the attempts to keep this normal have failed often, and the tiny pockets of time with empty hands long gone, and the nights of pure rest fleeting, and even when you want to throw this ball at a window or stomp it back to dust or yell, "Come take it back, I don't want it anymore," somehow you still move throughout your day, cradling this tiny treasure, sometimes juggling, balancing, dropping, playing, soothing. And right now, even if the cracks feel bigger, even if it feels like caring for this ball has taken over every moment of your existence, even if it feels like it will surely blow away like sand between your fingers, somehow you still keep your hands open. Some days it snows in May. Some months feel like one long day. Some years hold memories. Some years hold promise. Some years feel like they'll be the ones to end it all. But through it all, your tiny world keeps growing and you keep holding on. Just keep holding on. Just keep letting go. Just keep breathing. Just keep finding kind words for yourself when you drop the ball, for others when you want to throw the ball at them. Just keep juggling. Because despite what you think, you're a pro. Just keep laughing. Just keep crying. Just keep letting the cracks humble and soften and release you. Just let it crumble if you need to. Just ask for help when you can. Just another hour, day, moment. Just set it down when you need to. Just lay down when you need to. Just get in the car and scream if you can. Everyone is trying to hold something together, and everyone feels mostly like they're falling apart. But your tiny ball of earth is as beautiful and as chaotic as any other. And the trust and the challenge is real. But so is the joy and the struggle. And your small world contains the seeds of another. So go get a glass of water. Cheers to the best of times. Drink to the worst. And water that seed and your own precious self. That was from Ruthie, called Seed Bomb. Thank you, Ruthie, for that. Want to begin with a question this morning for us. If you had to name the season you find yourself in, if you had to call it, say, something personal, what would you name it? How would you describe it? And I'm sure we could all, I guess, kind of call this the collective season of the pandemic, but I'm sort of less interested in that and more what time it is for you right now. Because what I've become convinced of is that timing is everything. I don't know about you, but if you've been paying attention to ads lately, you will notice how quickly companies have pivoted in the way they've been marketing themselves. I mean, virtually overnight, countless companies have shifted their marketing towards a celebration of our frontline workers. Doing so, they attach themselves and their brands to, I think, a sentiment many of us are feeling right now. I find it curious just how quickly ads have shifted in response to the COVID crisis. And I suppose it should be no surprise because marketers know that in their world, timing is everything. And when companies try to sell us their products, when they try to sell them to us is oftentimes just as important as what they're trying to sell or how they're trying to sell them. And I've come to think that the world of marketing has like a lot of lessons for us. And I think one of the most important ones they can teach us is that seizing a moment or understanding the time is incredibly critical. Consider Dr. Scholl's. They, of course, sell shoe inserts that they're designed to make your feet feel more comfortable, your shoes feel more comfortable. Now, Dr. Scholl's was trying to find the perfect time to market their product, so they decided to place their advertisements for shoe inserts inside women's washrooms at dance clubs. Now, when I heard about this, I didn't immediately understand the implications, but Dr. Scholl's knew something I didn't. They had done their research. And what the research told them is that women often wear very uncomfortable high heel shoes when they go to nightclubs. Fair enough. But more than that, what Dr. Scholl's learned was that when night clubbing, one of the biggest reasons women go to the washroom isn't, in fact, to use the facilities, but to actually take off their shoes and rest their feet. And so Dr. Scholl's thought, how perfectly timed would it be to put an ad right in front of women who are resting their feet? And when they did this, sales for Dr. Scholl's jumped because women encountered the message when they were most receptive to it. Because timing is everything. Or consider Hellmann's mayonnaise. Who doesn't love a little Hellmann's mayonnaise? Actually, I wanted to do a little pop quiz this morning. Maybe you could put your answers in the YouTube comments, but here's my proposition. Agree or disagree. When it comes to a condiment to dip your fries into, mayonnaise is the superior choice. It's better than ketchup or any other condiment you might consider. Agree? Disagree? I don't know. For me, there's nothing like mayonnaise with French fries. It's delicious. But Hellmann's ran into a problem with their marketing because most people, they realized, consider mayo as a condiment you put on sandwiches. And they wanted to expand the way people thought they could use their mayo. So what they did was ingenious. They partnered with this supermarket chain in Brazil. And when a customer purchased Hellmann's, an algorithm somewhere in the computer machine put together recipes based on Hellmann's mayo and the contents of that person's grocery cart and printed them out on the back of their receipt. I mean, that's wild. I wish we had that up here, actually. I mean, think about how perfectly timed that is. At the very moment when people are thinking about food and meals and recipes, Hellmann's works it so that on the back of your receipt is a list of recipes, all of them using Hellmann's and the ingredients in your cart. Hellmann's found the perfect time to advertise to customers. Sales increased for them by 44% because timing is everything. One final story of how far companies take this, and I've mentioned this before, so I'm sure some of you are familiar with this, but picture this. This is a true story. This angry man walks into a Target store just outside of Minneapolis. He insists on speaking to the manager, and he's irate. And he accuses the manager of trying to encourage his 16-year-old daughter to become pregnant because she has been receiving pregnancy-related coupons from Target. Now, the manager has no idea what's going on. He promises, though, to figure it out, get back to the father. So he follows up a few days later with the father to see what's going on, check in, but the father's no longer angry. In fact, he's quite subdued now. And he proceeds to tell the manager that he'd had a talk with his daughter, and it turns out she was, in fact, pregnant. Somehow, Target knew she was pregnant before her family did. How so? Well, Target realized that new parents are a goldmine to market to. I mean, think about it. As new parents, everything's in flux. There's huge changes going on. You're exhausted. You're overwhelmed. So shopping patterns are in flux. And what Target wanted to know was there a way for them to reach new parents before any other company did? So R&D department, they employed a team of people to analyze the shopping habits of pregnant mothers using what they called predictive behavior analytics. And they were able to identify 25 or so products that when analyzed together, it allowed them to assign what they called a pregnancy prediction score on their customers. And so if you started buying like cotton balls or zinc or lotions it would give you a prediction score, and Target would start to send women coupons and offers timed to very specific stages of pregnancy. And when this news story broke in the New York Times, Target had tens of thousands of women in their database who they considered most likely pregnant. Because what Target knew was that it's not just what you advertise to people, it's when. Timing is everything. Now, of course, you can say, and I would agree, all of this feels incredibly manipulative and disturbing, but the success of well-timed marketing campaigns, it points, I think, to an important lesson for all of us. Timing really is everything in life. And if companies believe it's worth spending millions of dollars trying to advertise at the right time, the perfect moment, a precise season, then it probably makes sense for us to consider what period of time we find ourselves in. If timing is everything, then what time is it for you? What is this particular season of your life asking from you? You know, I've come to think that part of being healthy, mature adult, being alive is understanding our seasons of life, understanding the time we are in and what that calls from us, means for us. Because it's not just what we do in life. So often it's like a question of when. And certain moments of time, certain seasons present opportunities that are like waiting to be seized. And so it's important for us to understand that. And so here we are, we're stuck in this COVID crisis, but I want to try to pivot if possible. What time is it for you? What is this season of life telling you? What is it saying you might be ready for? What is it asking you maybe to leave behind? What are you ready to take on? What do you maybe need to give up? What do you need to embrace? What is God asking of you in this moment, in this season? The trouble, I think, a lot of times is that to fully embrace a new season of life means letting go of and leaving behind another season of life. This can be remarkably, I think, difficult for us. To embrace what is next or before us often means letting go of what was before. I mean, consider this story from Scripture. It's a resurrection story, of course, and I love it, though it comes across as odd. Mary's about to encounter Jesus resurrected. This is what happens in John 20. Now, Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head, the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they've put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." And Jesus said to her, "Mary." And she turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. And Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I've not yet ascended to the Father." I love this scene for so many reasons. It's gorgeous, but it ends rather oddly. There's this beautiful reunion scene, and it seems, though, marred by Jesus' sort of confusing remark about not wanting Mary to hold on to him, not wanting to let her give him a hug. I mean, it kind of feels like, chill out, Jesus. I mean, she just wants to give you a hug. What's the big deal? And I can imagine that this resonates a lot for some of our social huggers out there these days. It's a difficult time when hugging is kind of part of what you do and can't do it right now. In fact, I was just, I had to meet up with a friend. We were exchanging some materials, a pastor friend of mine, and we decided to meet up in this park kind of halfway between us, and we got out of our cars to exchange materials. We chatted for a little bit, keeping our social distance, and this guy loves to bear hug me every time he sees me, and I could see it just eating him up. He wanted to embrace me. He couldn't. Finally, at the end of our meeting, I go, all right, well, we'll see you later. I turn to go. He's like, whoa, 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 wait. And he sticks out his foot and says, how about a foot tap? I'm like, really? A foot tap? That's what we're doing now? Doing foot taps. I had to play footsies with this guy to end our conversation. This guy's so desperate for physical contact. I'm now touching feet with him to say goodbye. It struck me as a bit odd and funny, but it's interesting to me in this story because it comes across as, come on, she just wants to give you a hug. What's the big deal, Jesus? But of course, John is the artist, and this isn't at all about hugs. I think what John is doing us is reminding us about the human condition, our propensity as humans to try to hold on to what once was. What Mary wants, it seems, is for things to go back the way they always were. And she sees Jesus now and she's like, oh, perfect. Now we can go back to the way it was. Now we can carry on as usual, as normal. Now things can go back to the way they were. And it's like, no. Things are going to be different. And Mary believes things can just return to how they were. But what Jesus is teaching her here is that a season has ended and a new one was beginning. And I think the story is about human nature and how we always want things to go back to how they were when it was safe and comfortable. And I think what Jesus is saying here is, Mary, things can't go back to the way they were. Things are going to be different because that season is over. And now there's a new season. Our propensity, I think, is to always want to cling to the old, the familiar, the comfortable, what we know, what is. But I don't think we can do that and remain healthy. Timing is everything in life, and certain seasons ask different things from us. We can't recreate the past. We can't live in the good old days. The question is always, what time is it? This moment. What is this season asking of me? And I think to seize what is right in front of us, it means letting go of how it was so that you can be open to what is. Sometimes that means not clinging to the past, trying to hold on to what was. I had a little moment of that this week, a little one, not a big one, but for years now, I've been holding on to my sprinter status. It all started back in grade 2 when I set the record at the school for fastest 100-meter dash. I've told you about that before. I've always been a good sprinter. I'm quick over short distances. The long stuff, not so much, but I'm pretty good at the short sprints. In fact, a couple of years ago, a friend was mocking me. I challenged him to a race. Boom, I beat him. Neighbor, same thing happened a few years ago. I'm a good sprinter. But I kind of had that dashed a little bit this week. I was training on Tuesday for the One for Another race. I was going to run 5K yesterday. I did run 5K yesterday, but I was training for it on Tuesday. And I'm getting towards the end of my 5K route. I'm coming up Frederick Street, about to come to Lancaster. I see in front of me this guy on one of those mobility scooters. And I look up and I see him and I think to myself, okay, I'm going to have to get around him, I'm going to have to go out onto the road and go around him. That's what you do running these days to keep the social distancing. And so I kept my pace. I kept going, but I looked up and realized he had pulled off in front of me. He was quicker than me, so I thought I wouldn't have to deal with the challenge. But come up Frederick Street, I turn on to Lancaster's, the final home stretch to my home, end of the 5K. And I see in front of me, about 20 feet in front of me, the guy in the mobility scooter has stopped. He's just stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. And I thought, okay, well, I'll go around him. As I'm getting closer, I can see he's texting. So I go out onto the road, and as I'm passing him, he lights up a cigarette and hits the gas on his mobility scooter. Now I can't get by this guy. So he's coming down the sidewalk. I'm running beside him, and the whole time he's got his hand on things, smoking and looking at me. Just like that. I'm running. He's just smoking, looking at me. And I'm like, this is awkward. I got to get by this guy. So I pick up my pace a bit, but this guy picked up his pace too. Now I'm in a real pickle. I don't know how I can get by this guy. My street's coming. I got to turn left. And then I remember I'm a sprinter. So I take off in full flight, like I'm just going full out. But this guy speeds up too. I can't get by this guy. Finally, I come to Brubaker. I'm maybe a foot ahead of him, and I had to pull a dart right in front of him. And I know what some of you are thinking. Why don't you just stop and go behind him? Listen, me doing 5K, it's a miracle if I can make it to the end. If I stop, I'd never do it. I had to keep going. But I could barely outrun this guy. And I got home and I told Kristen this, and she's like, that's crazy. Were you crawling? How slow were you going? I was like, no, this guy was going fast. She looked up online. The top speed of a mobility scooter is 8 miles per hour. Now, for context, sprint speed, an average human runs between 12 and 18 miles per hour. Most of us can run 100 meters between 12 and 20 seconds. When she told me this, I thought, my goodness, I'm so slow. I couldn't get by this guy, just smoking and looking at me. And so it was yesterday. I did the one for another race. I thought, I have to destroy my daughter because she's running with me. I have to crush every dream of her. When we get to the final sprint, I'm going to take her out. I lost to my 8-year-old daughter. And in this moment, I've realized that perhaps my sprinting career is now done, which may not be a surprise to many of you, but I've been clinging to that for a while. And I realize it's a small thing. It's a little thing, but it shocked me nonetheless, because I think our propensity as humans is to cling to these ideas about who we are, cling to the past, cling to ideas around our identity, or cling to things that we think are at least part of our identity. But when I think about time, I think about this story, I think we can't do that and hope to remain healthy. Timing is everything, and certain seasons ask different things from us. We can't recreate the past. We can't live in the past. The question is always, what is this time, this moment, this season asking of me? What might I need to let go of in order to seize what is in front of me? What do I need to let go of so I can be open to what is? You know, it's one thing to recognize when a new season of life is upon us and what that asks of us, but oftentimes I think we miss two things that need to happen before we can enter a new season of life properly. And they are these: liminal space and grief. Let me expand on those two with a story from Scripture. This always gets me. I love this story. It's the story of Paul's farewell to his friends in Ephesus. It's in Acts 20. It goes this way. From Miletus, Paul sent to Ephesus for the elders of the church. And when they arrived, he said to them, "You know how I lived the whole time I was with you. From the first day I came into the province of Asia, I served the Lord with great humility and with tears and in the midst of severe testing. And now, compelled by the Spirit, I'm going to Jerusalem, not knowing what will happen to me there. Now I know that none of you among whom I have gone about preaching the kingdom will ever see me again. So be on your guard. Remember that for 3 years I never stopped warning each of you night and day with tears. Now I commit you to God and to the word of his grace, which can build you up and give you an inheritance among all those who are sanctified." When Paul had finished speaking, he knelt down with all of them and prayed. They all wept as they embraced him and kissed him. What grieved them most was his statement that they would never see his face again. Then they accompanied him to the ship. A scene in Scripture, it's an emotional one. I mean, for us, the thought of never seeing or speaking to someone again outside of death has become foreign to us. In a world of social media, email, somebody can be halfway around the world and we can still keep in contact. But for Paul and his friends, this was it. This was the final goodbye. And Paul had spent a decade in Asia. He had spent 3 intense years with this group of people, working with them. He'd been pouring himself into them. And of course, with that type of intensity, some deep relationships had been formed. But he senses a new chapter of his life emerging, his final season of life. And so he's leaving one period of time because for Paul, a new time had come. And two things really jump out to me about this scene. The first is liminal space. What I so treasure about this scene here with Paul is that while one season's coming to an end for him, the next one, it hasn't quite started yet. And working with churches in Asia has been his life call, his mission, his purpose. But now he senses that season is done. And he feels compelled to return to Jerusalem, home to something new. And yet, while he feels compelled to something new, he has no idea what that looks like yet. Notice what he says to his friends. And now, compelled by the Spirit, I'm going to Jerusalem, not knowing what will happen to me there. One season's done. There's another in front of him, but he doesn't know what that's going to look like. All he knows is that he feels compelled to go. Paul finds himself in what we call liminal space. By that we mean a period of time between seasons, between chapters of life. A period of time when you're not in the thing that was past, but you're not quite in the thing that's to come either. You're in the in-between. And from my own experience, I've come to think a lot of interesting, important learnings happen in liminal space. You know there's something new coming, a next thing, but you find yourself waiting for that to reveal itself. You find yourself trying to figure out, what is this next season of life going to be? What does it mean? And that process can be painful. So you might try some things that doesn't feel really right. It can be a time of real tension, and none of us like tension. We don't want to wait. We don't like uncertainty. It's uncomfortable. We want to rush through liminal space, get to that next thing. And this whole COVID-19 thing has really just collectively put us in liminal space. I know for many of us, myself included, we want this done. And yet, liminal space has something to teach us, and maybe there are some real learnings to be had in this period of waiting. I think for many of us, our lives feel on hold, right? And while that's frustrating, it can be an opportunity. It can be the opportunity we need to think through our lives, do some soul searching, asking ourselves, am I on the trajectory I thought I would be? Is this how I want to live my life? Liminal space gives us those opportunities, and that was what was happening to Paul. He didn't know what was ahead. He just felt compelled to go, to head in a certain direction. And for us, it might not be a feeling of compulsion, but COVID has compelled us to go, even against our will, into something new. And I think for some of us, we don't know what that season might mean, but it gives us the opportunity to do some deep reflection about ourselves. All of us know that what was before, be it the way we do church or work or family life or travel, social life, those seasons have ended. I don't think any of us are sure what is next. And that's hard. And that's scary. But liminal space asks us to actively sit, listen, be present with God. And the thing is, I don't think it quite works if we're constantly filling our lives with distractions. We miss what these liminal moments can teach us. And as it was for Paul, I suspect it is for some of us. New seasons of life will bring us into a season of liminal space before what is new, what is ahead, is revealed. And I think that calls for our attention, calls us to attend to it. But what most moves me in this story, this scene, is the tangible sense of grief we see displayed here. Paul announces what's happening, and there's weeping, there's embraces, there's saying goodbye for the last time. As Paul moves into this new and final season of his life, he leaves the old season behind with a period of grief, which I think is always the way, the healthy way. For us, whenever we end a season of life, it will often involve some kind of grief. And one of the reasons I think we so often live under the umbrella of nostalgia, unable to be present to what is in front of us, a season before us, is because we were never given the time or took the time to grieve what was ending. was thinking about that this week. This is now our 9th Sunday online. And I was thinking back to the first Sunday that we canceled. And that week was such a blur. It unfolded so quickly. And I remember it was Wednesday or Thursday, you started hearing about churches closing their doors for this. And we were holding out, and I'm talking to Sarah and Dave and leadership team and trying to, figure out what should we do. And on Friday, the plan was, no, we're still going to go. And on Saturday, the plan was, no, we're still going to go. And then it became increasingly clear that we were going to have to close for that Sunday. And I remember so badly wanting to hold on for one more Sunday. And it became irresponsible, I guess, but I think inside of me, I knew that this was marking the end of something. And I desperately wanted that one final Sunday to be together and just acknowledge things are probably going to change. And I think it's important that we have those moments of grieving, those moments when we can say, okay, we're leaving something behind, and that's hard. Still remember, it so annoyed me at the time. I was in my graduating year. I was in a class, and this kind of thing would only happen at a Bible college, I suppose. But it was our last class. We were graduating. Everybody was moving on with their lives. Our last class, right at the end, one of our professors said, okay, time is done. I want everybody to stand up. So we stood up. I said, I want everybody to get into a big circle. Got into a big circle. And then he said, I want everybody to join hands. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't stand this sentimental stuff. What other place would something like that happen? So I was a bit annoyed joining hands with everyone sitting in what felt like a kumbaya circle. But then what he said it smacked me hard. He said, I want you to take a good look around at this room and everybody in the room, because in all likelihood, this is the last time this specific group of people will ever be in the same room together again. I remember at the time, the gravity of that it shocked me a bit. I never really considered that. I mean, here we all were, all of us graduating, everybody going on their way, and what this professor wanted to do was just take a moment in our excitement about what was next to just say, let's breathe here and let's recognize what we're saying goodbye to. And so we did, and it was this powerful moment. And, 2 years later, one of the students in that class, I wasn't particularly close with him, but he was in Japan, was hit by a bus and killed 2 years after that class. And I remember thinking about that when I heard the news. Wow, that really was the last time. And I so appreciate, even though I sort of hated the sentimentality of it at the time, but I appreciated him just having us slow down. Let's say goodbye to this before we enter what is next. Because the thing is this, change is always a form of loss. We can never go back to the way things were, and that makes new seasons hard. We don't know what to expect. We've never been to this new place before, so we can end up trying to constantly recreate old seasons. And so when we leave a season of time, when the time is right to move on to the next thing, we have to grieve that. And the sad thing is we have so few rituals culturally to help us move in and out of seasons. I truly think we're poor for it. But I'd say this, if you sense yourself on the cusp of a new season, about to leave something behind, then take the time to grieve it. If change, any kind of change, makes you sad, then grieve it. And we see that played out in this scene. Paul knows something is new ahead, but he doesn't just take off like, hey, see ya, excited about this new chapter. No, he pauses. He calls his friends together. They're on a dock overlooking the sea. He tells them, God's got something new for me. And he knows he's got to go, but it comes with grief. And so they weep together on a dock by the ocean. They embrace. They grieve the passing of a certain season. to properly move forward into what this moment of time might have for each of us, it sometimes means grieving what we're now leaving behind. In life, timing is everything. So what time is it for you? We've all been sort of forced into a new season. So what is this particular moment of time, this season? What is it asking of you? What's it calling you to? I think the words of the wisdom tradition are appropriate here. Song that Dave just sang for us, Ecclesiastes 3. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent, a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. There's a time for everything, a season for every activity under heaven. So what time is it for you? Are you clinging to something from the past that you need to let go of? And I mean, let's be honest, I think there are probably many ways in which things are not going to go back to normal after this. We may not like that at all, but whatever it is there something you need to let go of so you can properly enter into a new season of life? Sometimes I think it's helpful to name that. Are you in liminal space? I mean, for some of you, whatever's next, maybe it feels really immediate. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But for others, maybe right now you just don't know what is next. A lot of us don't. And maybe you sense a shift, but you have no idea what that looks like or means, and that's uncomfortable. And again, the temptation in liminal space is to numb ourselves, distract ourselves from that discomfort. But perhaps we can learn to trust the uncertainty, the tension, the waiting. May we all learn to lean into liminal space courageously. This time and space, it has its own work to do on us. So even if you sense yourself not knowing what time it is for you, rest in the knowledge that it's okay. There's a purpose for that too. There's a season for not being in a season. Maybe some of us here needed a period of grieving. You need a moment. You need a time, maybe a ritual. Name what you're leaving behind. Maybe like Paul, you need to stand on a dock, name the season of life that's no more for you, and then weep over that. Again, we don't have a lot of rituals, so let me simply say, if you're grieving something, a loss of part of your identity, a loss of season of life for you, let us know. Let us in some way stand with you in that. Name it, and then say why leaving this season makes you so sad. Finally, maybe there's a new season waiting for you to enter in it. What I suspect is for many of us, there's something right in front of us. Something calling out to us, asking for us to attend to it, to bring our whole self to it. Because here's the thing I believe, God's Spirit is always moving us forward to what's next. And so for some of us, a few of us, the time to enter is now. And so may you have the courage to enter into a new season with your whole being. May you enter this new season with hope and expectation. Timing in life is everything. So what time is it for you? I'm going to throw it over to a closing prayer and video, but I hope that you will keep that in mind and consider that this week. And with that, go in peace.
Slow me down, oh Lord, slow me down. Help my heart to hear your Speak into my life, Lord, speak now. Slow me down, oh Lord, slow me down. Clear my mind, oh Lord, clear my mind. Bring me peace that I cannot find. Take my worried thoughts, break my pride. Clear my mind, oh Lord, clear my mind. Wake my soul, oh Lord, wake my soul. With this mess I've made, make me whole. Of this life called mine, take control. Wake my soul, oh Lord, wake my soul. Slow me down, oh Lord, slow me down. Help my heart to hear your sound. Speak into my life, Lord, speak now. Slow me down, oh Lord, slow me down. Slow me down, oh Lord, slow me down. Slow me down, oh Lord, slow me down.